Open Tech Convo. I am your host, Serigne Omarlo Nicolas, and today we have with us Adrian McInman discussing the last topic of a three-part series on crisis management. We have already looked at what to do before and during a crisis. Today we are looking at what to do after a crisis. For the What to Do Before a Crisis video, Adrian emphasized CPR, courageous plan and routines. In the What to Do During a Crisis video, he emphasized staying calm. So Adrian, what is your best advice for leaders after a crisis?
There is arguably a whole lot more for a leader to do after a crisis than before or during a crisis. However, maybe most of these things can be reduced to 3 business techniques and 3 psychology techniques. The 3 business techniques include using a crisis aftermath checklist, a media strategy, and a 4-step DISR process, while the psychology techniques include providing psychological support a few days after a crisis for those who need it, embracing failure, and looking after yourself and your subordinates.
Okay, in that case, let's discuss the 3 business techniques and the 3 psychology techniques one by one. Let's start with the crisis aftermath checklist. Could you please tell me a bit more about this?
If you remember back to our first video, I emphasized CPR. The P in CPR is planning. An important task in such planning is the creation of a simple but comprehensive crisis aftermath checklist, which will remind you of all the things you need to do after a crisis. The beauty of it is that it simplifies decision making. Your checklist only needs 3 columns, 1 for the task that needs to be achieved, and 2 columns to tick whether you have achieved the task or not. Tasks can include things like, have you taken photos of all the damage? And have you kept all staff and stakeholders fully informed?
Okay, that sounds easy enough. Now please tell me about what a media strategy should entail.
Businesses would benefit from a media strategy that aims to use the media to their advantage in a crisis so as to achieve a balanced media coverage. It should be concise and emphasize the following 7 actions. Respond to the media quickly. Hammer home 2 to 3 main points. Practice before giving a media presentation. Anticipate the media's questions. Create answers for their anticipated questions. Stay in control when communicating with the media, and practice staying in control. Don't stall for time, as that will increase negative media coverage. Instead, be proactive and guide the conversation towards only a few points you want to emphasize.
It is safe to say that a well-thought-out media strategy will provide significant benefits after a crisis. Let's now discuss your last business technique, the 4-step DISR process. What is that?
DISR, which stands for Document, Investigate, Share and Reevaluate, is a sequential 4-step process. First, you need to document all relevant information related to the crisis. Second, you need to determine why the crisis occurred and how it can be prevented or the impact minimized in the future. Such an investigation should be carried out by an experienced investigator Third, you need to share the information that you have learnt from your investigations. And fourth, you need to reevaluate your business strategies.
Okay, so we have now talked about your 3 business techniques. Let's now talk about the first of your 3 psychology techniques, which is making psychological support available. Please tell me more about that.
Many people are affected negatively by crises, and some experience negative emotions many years later. So, leaders should offer psychological support several days after the crisis for those who want it. This should not be confused with the now discredited debriefing technique, as research has shown that debriefing does not decrease anxiety, burnout, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. And in fact, some studies have even shown that debriefing increases such symptoms. So, just offer psychological support a few days after a crisis for those who want it.
So I get your message that leaders should offer psychological support several days after a crisis for individuals who want it. However, I am a little surprised by your second psychology technique, which is to embrace failure. Please, could you explain that in more detail?
The idea is that you should learn from your mistakes and view them as growth opportunities. Some have gone so far as to suggest that we should celebrate our mistakes. The thinking behind such advice is that the first reaction of managers when they make a mistake is to think and feel negatively. Unfortunately, that can lead to lowered confidence and less courage to try new things. Instead, a better way to view mistakes is as great opportunities to grow and necessary costs. So, embrace your failures.
Now, could you please explain the last of the 3 psychology techniques, which is looking after yourself and your subordinates?
To avoid physical or psychological problems after a crisis, you need to look after yourself. You can do that by prioritizing all 5 components of nests, which are nutrition, exercise, sleep, thinking, and social support. Unfortunately, some individuals leave appliances switched on or drive carelessly after a crisis due to lowered concentration levels. So, pause once in a while to ensure you are physically safe. Likewise, prioritize doing pleasurable things. You may even decide to seek out legal, medical, or psychological help. Leaders should help their subordinates by mentoring excellent behaviour and turning a crisis into a teachable moment.
So now we are at the end of our 3-part series on crisis management. Is there one final thing that you would like to mention?
Sure. I like a comment by Stephen Covey. He suggested if you don't do it in leadership time up front, you do it in crisis management time down the road.